I've never walked alone. Nah. 'Cause you're faithful to the end and closer than a friend, and your love will never fail. In every season you are there. Faithful.
Seems how I kind of seem to be on the theme of asking you questions to kick off our podcast. I'm going to ask you another question today. And my question is, I think it's fair to say that every person struggles with insecurity. I think that
Mhm,
would be a fair statement.
mhm.
So, is insecurity, if you had a top three, would insecurity be in your top three, or would it be more like, it's more like in my top five or top 10?
It's like, what can be higher than a top 1? Like, if you need to rate your pain to 1 to 10, you say 100. Like, is there a, level that I can say is higher than 1? I know there's not, but yeah, no, it's like my number 1, not
Insecurity is
thing
number
that I
one.
deal with. Yes, insecurity.
Wonder if it is for everybody. If we all like ranked our issues, y'all, if I ranked my issues, it would look like Santa Claus's naughty
Liz?
list. But I wonder if everybody, like, if insecurity falls in their top few, top one, top few.
Probably, I would have to say, if we're really honest, yes. I mean, I think there's probably different levels that some of us are like at 1, that's our number
Mhm.
1, and then, there's probably people that, "Oh, yeah, I have insecurities, but, it's like a 5 or whatever," so but I'm probably judging people too because I look at people who project such a confidence
Mm.
that, you know, they probably the insecurities they're number 1, but they never project that to me.
Well, I will say I am a very insecure person, like across the board, not just in my looks or anything. I can be insecure about driving to a new location.
Mm,
I mean, we have GPS and everything now, but I can literally get myself worked up about
mhm.
driving to a place I've never been before. Or heaven forbid me have to park in a parking deck I ain't never parked in before. I mean, I will lose my mind about parking in a parking deck I ain't never parked in before, and so I haven't shared this publicly, but one of my new insecurities that has come, so we'll just rip the Band-Aid off and share it, is I've shared that I have Hashimoto's and I started taking a new medicine and I don't really know if it's the Hashimoto's or if it's the new medicine, or I don't know what the combination is. I've always had super thin, fine hair. So if I lose a strand of hair, it is obvious on my head. But something took place towards the end of last year. I would say mid November. My hair started falling out. I don't want to be dramatic and say by the handfuls, but if I said by the quarterfuls, if you grouped it all
Yeah.
together, it was about the size of a quarter, but if you have thin hair like me and you're losing hair by the quarterfuls every day, it ends up being a lot of hair. And so I jokingly say I went from having like a 4 head to about a 7 or 8 head because my hairline just really going back. So I have a friend who wears wigs who just encouraged me to just bite the bullet and start wearing wigs. She was like, "Just wear the wig." And so there is medicine I can take that can help my hair loss and things, but I feel like I'm in a good place with the Hashimoto's and with the medicine I'm on. I'm almost afraid to add something to it and throw myself off. And so your daughter is my doctor. And I told her, I was like, I will be bald to feel well. Like, it is okay. My husband's bald. We'll just be bald together. But let me tell you, it is easier to say that than it is to live it. I am in a season of like trying to my friend who is such an encourager to me, her wigs change based on her outfit. And she's a little further down the road than I am, but her husband jokingly says he has to take a picture of her before they leave the house and go anywhere because if he had to report her missing, he don't even know what hair she had on that day. And so there's so many options with wigs. And so I'm wearing wigs like I've got this one that I have on today, and I have a darker brown one that's straight, and then I've got some shorter ones. I've got one that's a little got some red and some pink in it. But I find that I'm so insecure about changing my hair. And I've always said, "Oh, if I ever lost my hair, I would have fun with wigs. I would wear different colors and different styles," but it's easier said than done. But wearing wigs has also highlighted so many other insecurities that I have in my life, and it's just right now like flat all my insecurities are flashing. And so I find it interesting, the hard would be the only word I can think of, to go from wearing long hair one day to short hair the next day. Like that feels weird,
Yeah, I can
you
see that.
know?
Yeah.
And so it has made me realize also that I struggle to go from being in a group of believers of Christ and the conversation that is there, and then going and being in a group of people who maybe they believe in God, but they're not believers. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a totally different group of people, and me acting the same in both groups.
Mm.
I find myself secure in the group. Just say, if I were to go and hang out in my life group at church, I'm very secure around those women and laughing and cutting up and having a good time. Okay. But I find myself in a group of other women, maybe women at work or whatever, and I find myself being very insecure with the way that I talk or the things I say. And it's just across the board, it's made me realize it's made me realize that I think a lot of my insecurities as a believer in Christ is I sometimes want to stand on both sides of the fence. I want to stand with a foot in righteousness and a foot in the world and straddle the two. I'm just being honest. I really am convicted by that. Now, how the Lord taught me that through losing my hair and wearing wigs. I told you God speaks to me in strange ways, but He's really showing me that sometimes I'm not sold out.
Hmm. And I can see that, but what is something that's coming to my mind too is that, and please don't hate on me for how I'm going to present this, but the fact that for us, that it's harder, I'm less secure in being around believers, if that, fellow Christians, because I feel like there's such an expectation after growing up as a preacher's kid versus like you can feel like you can be more yourself and not necessarily go to the extent of acting like them and participating over here, but there's more of an acceptance of being who you are, and it's okay. And while you were talking, what brought to my mind was the time that we went on a motorcycle ride with the friends of ours, and we rolled into the Banditos clubhouse. We were going to a
Definitely not somewhere you would find yourself.
No, didn't plan on it. We were, our plan was to go to a crawfish dinner, and naive me was thinking this was like a community arts and craft festival when
Because
we
bikers hold arts and crafts festivals. Sure.
know that. We didn't know that. So we're rolling into Jackson, Mississippi, and I'm looking for the signs for us to turn to go to the fairgrounds. I don't think Jackson, Mississippi has fairgrounds, but the location of where the crawfish bowl and the arts and crafts, and then the GPS says turn left. You have arrived at your destination, and it was the Banditos, which I didn't really know. But what I'm getting at is they were some of the sweetest, most accepting group of people, non-believers by all means, let me just say, but the most accepting. And we had so much fun just hanging out, I mean, we didn't act like them, but they included us. And I mean, it was just fun,
Mhm.
and Now they had some fun at my expense when they realized I thought I was coming to arts and crafts, so, I mean, it was like that, and now don't get me wrong, my anxiety level, like, rose once I realized where we were, and it wasn't some of it was where we were, but then my whole mind went to, "Well, if so and so finds out here, what are they gonna say about if they knew I was here?" It all became about what would somebody else say. But then on the other
Yeah.
hand too, I was trying to decide if we ended up in jail, which child was I gonna call to
Well,
come
and
bail us out? But then it went back to, well, if I end up in jail, what are people in my hometown gonna say if they knew this is where I was when I got put in jail? This whole thing. I went down this whole rabbit trail. But anyway, all that to say, I mean, it it was just an eye opener to me, and I think God used that for me sometimes. Think about that because they made me feel more comfortable than sometimes when I walk into church or into a church setting, and that, it was a lesson for me of how do I treat people. You know what I'm saying?
yes, how welcoming are we?
Are we? Do I just look at them and decide this is who they are, therefore I don't welcome them? And let me just tell you, I definitely did not look the part of, I wasn't wearing the leather. I didn't look like the typical, member. So, I mean, I stood out like a sore thumb, let me just tell you. But, I mean, that's brought back to my memory several times, and God uses it to convict me because I sometimes pass judgment on people based on the way they look, and I'm not welcoming, you know? But here I am having all this insecurities, I don't know. That was a totally crazy scenario, but I find it sometimes not that I'm trying to be straddle of the fence, it's just I feel like, where do I feel welcome? And that was been a hard lesson for me but then I was also talking about Paul today, and, I don't know, I lost my train of thought, but not that we're supposed to be like the world, but I don't think we're also supposed to be ugly, and discounting. Maybe it was last week's lesson when Paul said, I'm a Jew to a fellow Jew, I'm a Greek to, I am to whoever you are at the time. Not that, and the point was he didn't compromise his theological beliefs, but he didn't, as you tell me sometimes, he didn't die on the small hills.
Mhm. Well, and my life group, we're going through First Peter, and today we were in the part of scripture where Peter was, reminding everybody about Noah. And, one of the things that brought out one of the commentaries I was studying was that Noah didn't worry that his neighbor wasn't building an ark.
See, that
He
would've been me, I
wasn't
would've.
he wasn't focused that, the mayor of the town didn't approve the permit to build the ark kind of thing. And I think that a lot of times that's where we stay. We talk about, oh, we're called to be set apart, but being set apart and living set apart is hard to do
Mhm,
because we're more concerned about what someone else
mhm,
thinks
mhm,
and what
mhm.
someone else says and what the story that would be told. And maybe it's not an issue for other people. I think for us being preachers' kids, we kind of grew up in a fishbowl where like everything in our home was scrutinized, not so much by our parents, but and again, I want to give grace to the time and the period that we were in. It was just a different time. But it was just growing up in a fishbowl, that's it. We were the example, we were the measuring stick for others, and which really cracks me up, because it would be like the preacher's kids would never do that. Honey, if you only knew what the preacher's kids did. But anybody that measured their child up to me, I apologize now because I was not a good measuring stick for you to be measured to. Let's just lay that out there. But I think that I'm so sensitive to that. I'm so sensitive. I read an article a couple of weeks ago talking about that, when you go to a party or a gathering of some sort and you leave that gathering, you regurgitate what happened. I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I
Mhm,
sat like
mhm,
that. I can't believe, I was holding
mhm.
my plate and that happened. And it was like, you do realize every single person does the exact same thing. Like nobody's paying attention to what you said, did, sat, carried, ate, whatever, because they're thinking the exact same thing about themselves.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of made me wonder, is everybody insecure? Even the people that we think are not insecure, were the banditos a little insecure about welcoming y'all because y'all were so different to them?
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, banditos are a rough, tough biker gang, a really rough, tough biker gang. And so to roll up into a rough and tough, I'm scared to say criminal organization, but
We don't wanna get in trouble.
I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know what all the banditos do, but they are a rough and tough group of people.
And not just welcome, but, like, placed us in the center of the front row table to sit and eat crawfish with us.
Gosh, right then I thought about they're putting you at a place of like royalty acceptance. Like that and the Bible even talks about that, when David came to Saul and he sat him at his seat, at his table. Wow.
I mean,
But we don't
and there were so many too. I mean, as I was sitting there and as I recount that story, me sitting there worrying about, well, what is the story? And somebody's going to say, if they knew this is the preacher's daughter was there, not, I mean, I guess once a preacher's daughter, always a preacher's daughter, right? But then it's the exact same thing that the Pharisees were doing with Jesus. They were eating with sinners. Not that, let me just clarify that, y'all, I was not sitting there having a Bible study. So I can't compare myself to holding church there. I'm not going to say that, but it just was like, I don't know. It's been a big lesson to me as far as going back to the insecurities. Do I help perpetuating somebody else's life's insecurity because I'm placing this, I don't want to say judgment or expectations or how I think something's supposed to be as far as your walk and where you're supposed to be.
Mhm.
I don't know, you know, but sometimes I wish I could just um put on a different costume and be
Well,
somebody
see,
different for a day or so and act out in that costume.
it's so funny you say that because one of the things I have come to realize in my short beginnings of wearing wigs is that I do have one that I find myself when I wear her, I am a little sassier. So I have to be careful, and it's not taking on a different personality, I don't mean that, but it's almost like I have a different confidence when I wear that particular wig than if I wore just your standard dark-haired, straight wig. I feel more professional when I wear that one, and so it's kind of gotten comical because my husband would be like, "Oh, she's gonna be sassy today," but I find it hard. Like it's easier for me to go to the grocery store that way, but it's hard for me to go to church or go to work wearing different wigs. But it's made me kind of wonder at the same time where all the have I hidden, I guess the best way I'm trying to say what I'm trying to say is, have I through the years quieted different parts of myself to fit the mold for someone and somewhere else, if that's making sense? Have I belittled these little things? I'm not talking like sassy being out there throat punching people. I know that's not being like Christ, but it's like, but the sass of me is also a fun side of me,
Mhm.
a person who's willing to take a chance, put herself out there, do something that maybe the professional side of me, take a chance that the professional side of me wouldn't, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that I'm beginning to realize is that we kind of make ourselves smaller because it makes other people feel uncomfortable. And instead of just owning who we are and being who we are, it's just easier to blend in. it's easier to be what that group around us wants to be. And one thing I can say about my husband rides motorcycles. He's not a bandito, but he rides bikes. And so it's inevitable when you're on a bike and you're out riding, you're going to see 100 bikes, and we stop at gas stations, talk to people, hang out with people or whatever. But one of the things I've come to realize is they are who they are. I've never met a biker, not once, who was apologetic for who they were. And they get really a bad rap. They
do.
really do. They're dangerous or whatever people think of them, but they never apologize for who they are. And I think there's something to be said about that. I think we can all grow, but they have to be very secure because, I mean, every time they get on that bike, there's a chance that they could die. People run them off the road, and I mean,
Mhm.
you wouldn't believe the close calls my husband and I have had on bikes, just people not paying attention. So they're always in this defensive state of mind, and they have to be very secure in their ability to handle that bike. And I think it translates into their life. And I envy that very much so.
Interesting that you say that because as you were describing a biker is really kind of in a way how I guess what was it Paul talking about that we're to give a defense?
I think so.
So where is I don't want to quote the address, but maybe if we took that personality a little bit as far as in our Christian walk of being on the I don't want to say on the defensive because then that makes you sound like you're trying to be a argumentative Christian. I don't want to be like that. But if you have that idea that you're always on guard, because we are told to be on guard because Satan is looking whom he can devour. So if you're always on guard of who's trying to derail you, then, you'll be ready. So, I don't know how I'm trying to put where I'm going with this, but so all that to say, no matter what group you're in, you're going to be on guard to be able to be who you are if you're not in a church group, but also enjoy the company that you are in and guard the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Or guard,
Do
not
because
necessarily avoid this group, but if we have that mentality of being on guard, well then, not that you act more high and mighty, but will you just be on guard on whatever is going on that you remove yourself or something?
because what if that person, I mean, like, I could probably, no lie, our dad was a pastor. I still have some of his Bibles here in my home. I probably, truthfully, could pull out a good 50 Bibles, 50 plus Bibles in my house, you know? But not every house has even one Bible in their home.
Right.
So, what if we are the only gospel that somebody else sees? But we're so insecure in that, and we're so insecure in all these other things that we don't even show that. I guess that's where what I've been so convicted of lately is I see how Satan has used my insecurity to his advantage to silence me and for me not to be a living, breathing, walking representation of the gospel of Christ because I'm so wound up in what does someone else think of me?
Mm, yes.
What is someone else's perception of me? I wore long hair yesterday. If I show up today and I have short blonde hair, what are they going to think? Like and that's a silly thing, but like those are things that are through my mind. Now, ain't it interesting? I don't wear the same clothes everywhere I go, but I'm concerned about wearing the same hair everywhere I go. And I see where I have allowed that to be a trap. Now, how do I overcome that? And what is the end result? Well, I mean, Christ is the only one that can overcome that, is surrendering that to him. But like, what does that look like? I don't know. I have no clue. How do you stop being insecure? If you're listening to this podcast, hoping I'm fixing to give you some tips on how to not be insecure, you are listening to the wrong one. Because all you gonna get from here is how big of a mess we are
We
and how
don't
we
know.
ain't got answers for nothing. Because the Sunday school answer is, oh, you just surrender it to the Lord.
How? I mean, like, seriously, how? How do
How?
you do that?
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm on a journey of figuring it out. Maybe we figure it out from here to when the Lord calls us home of what that looks like. But I don't know.
Well, you pointing that out. See, I have a tendency of taking all the people in the Bible and putting them on a pedestal of the being super Christians or super believers or whatever. And our preacher today, when he brought up Jeremiah, like Jeremiah's a big prophet, you know. Did I not realize that when God called him to his mission, Jeremiah comes back to him in chapter 1, verse 6 and says, I do not know how to speak. I'm too young. He was insecure.
Mhm.
Jeremiah was insecure. But then God said, don't say that. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid. Then verse 9, then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. So our pastor today pointed out that God touched him in the area that he said was an issue, an insecurity. So in a way, I guess well-meaning when people say just surrender to the Lord, Jeremiah said, well, this is my issue. I can't do this. This is my insecurity. And then the Lord touched him and, it's like, well, now you're going to have the words. Here you go. Don't be. And I guess that's the journey we have to take is just learning to say and verbalize it. Maybe I'm more worried about how crazy is this? What is God going to think if I tell him I can't speak? I can't do this. I'm too scared to do whatever it is, you know? But here he's like, okay, well, I got it all fixed for you. Maybe we just need to be honest about it with him. All right, y'all, that's a wrap for today's episode. If something in this conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or just made you feel seen, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them. Send it to a friend, drop it in a group chat, or post it on your story. That kind of support means the world to us. You always find every episode, updates, and more over at therecoveringpreacherskids.com. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We'll see you next time.